Now, even as protests and promises continue, the Indian Army has now issued a notification for the first round of recruitment under the new Agnipath scheme. So the government going ahead with its scheme as promised. The registration for recruitment rallies to begin from July. Prime Minister Modi also amidst countrywide protests, including the Congress, taking out Padayatra to the President's, taking this issue to the President's door. The Prime Minister today spoke up and spoke out amidst countrywide protests and severe opposition criticism over the Agnipath defence recruitment scheme. The Prime Minister said that some decisions may look unfair at first, but will help in nation building later.
कई फैसले, कई रिफॉर्म तात्कालिक रूप से अप्रिय लग सकते हैं, लेकिन समय के साथ उन रिफॉर्म का लाभ आज देश अनुभव करता है। रिफॉर्म का रास्ता ही हमें नए लक्ष्यों, नए संकल्पों की तरफ ले जाता है।
All right, so the government saying this is a much needed major reform that will benefit the Indian youth and army aspirants in the long run. Is that true, or has a coveted profession been reduced to a joke? Is this a nation building exercise, as the Prime Minister says, or a cruel joke on army aspirants? First and foremost, let's go across to Major General G.G. Dwivedi, a retired Major General Dwivedi, a defense analyst, and also Lieutenant General Ved Chaturvedi, a former DG, the Medical Services Army. Thank you both for joining us. First, I want to just try and understand some of the controversial points here. The main reasoning for this scheme seems to be the age factor, that we have a large number of soldiers who are in their 30s, said the army chiefs in that big press conference over the weekend, and that this age factor has become worrisome. Will that actually be addressed by this new scheme? Major General Dwivedi, to you.
Well, Saira, let me first be very straightforward. That armed forces are always transforming because we always prepare for the next war. And therefore, transformation is very much inherent in our process. But nonetheless, the transformation must be progressive and not retrograde. So coming to this recruitment policy, firstly, very unfortunate what is happening, and very unfortunate the timing per se, when the nation is faced with all these security issues that you list on the table. Well, the armed forces definitely needs to be young. They need to be having very sharp teeth, and they need to be well trained and well motivated. The current process, and I am a combat man, I got baptized in the 71 war, commander in the so I speak from experience and not so much as a academic discussion. Well, in the armed forces, what's most important is people who join it, they join out of passion. There's a certain amount of pride. They don't actually go in transactional mode as to what will be my pay and what will be my, future prospects. They are fired with a certain amount of passion, there's a certain amount of legacy. And many of the people who join in, their fathers are serving, their brothers are there, and it's like a social standing, it's a tradition in the villages. So what happens? First and foremost, you see the scheme itself, that you are recruiting people and 75% you're firing them off. Means that this scheme itself, selection process is a big question mark. Secondly, you are encouraging very unhealthy competition. Armed forces are all on camaraderie. They're all on spirit deco. So when you are taking these people, they are going to be now looking at each other as competitors. Rather than seeing a cooperative atmosphere, they are going to be actually almost cutthroat competition as to who will make it in 25. And three, most important, those people who are left out, 75%. We wear a rank. They said, the other panelist, he is Lieutenant General, I am Major General. We have left the army years back, but we carry the rank. The rank is with us all alive. This recruit who does 4 years and goes back, what is the legacy he is carrying? He will look down upon his own village and his own environment. And I am very close to my ancestral village. I come across with a lot of people. So this is not a right step. We can do a lot of rebooting of the current system.
It's very clear you believe that this is not the right step. But I want to understand two important issues raised by the government when asked why the need for this scheme and why now. One is this age factor. So if I could go across to Lieutenant General Chaturvedi, does this solve that problem that our armed forces chiefs say that India is facing. We have an aging army, they say, that should not be in its 30s. It should be reduced. Does this scheme solve that problem? So if you could answer, help answer that question.
First thing first is a message to people and those youngsters who are indulging in violence and all. Probably they are too young to understand any scheme. It is up to the media, it is up to the leaders of this country to make them understand about the scheme.
I'm trying to do that, sir, but neither you nor Major General Dwivedi have answered. Will this actually help solve that problem? Because when you have a policy that the government has come up with and it is pushing through and it says they're doing so for one reason, will it do that? I'm asking you because both of you have served in the army. You would know better than anyone.
Look, I was a Director General Medical Services. I'll give you the first-hand account. During Kargil operation, I was in charge of that ward and I saw suddenly 2 commanding officers and admitted. So I was surprised that 2 commanding officers are admitted. So everybody was talking about they have run away or something. No, they have not run away. They had blood pressure, diabetes, carrying on as a commanding officer. Look, war is not a normal situation. War requires an extreme degree of fitness. Since that time, a lot of discussions are going on how to bring down the age of the army.
Will this do that?
Aim. So how you do that,
that is more the problem.
So this is one scheme which may, probably any scheme can have a lot of changes later on, but definitely the purpose of the scheme was to bring down the age of people.
And do you believe this will achieve that goal?
Definitely it is 75-25. Biggest problem is not the age. Biggest problem is what will happen to those people who will go out, because this country is not like, say, America or Australia or Israel, where you get a job. Biggest problem is, as I said, the scheme is good. The biggest problem in this scheme is how to absorb those people.
How to absorb them. All right. But
yes,
I want to...
that is the main issue.
Okay. So the two... now, Major General Dwivedi referred to the problems that India is facing on our borders. For example, we, unfortunately, geopolitically, we have China on one side and we have Pakistan on the other. Under these circumstances, if I could ask you, Major General Dwivedi and Lieutenant General Chaturvedi, this scheme, basically under this scheme, please help me understand this if I have it wrong, the armed forces have not increased the total quantum of recruitment. So we used to in the past recruit, correct me if I'm wrong, 40,000 youth. They will still be recruiting 40,000 youth, except 75% of them will not be absorbed, which means the total that the army takes in, sir, does that go down or does it stay the same? And if it goes down, is that what is required for India right now? It may be, I do not know if in today's, new age, in 2022, if we need as many foot soldiers on the ground. So if Major General Dwivedi, to you first, and then Lieutenant General Chaturvedi, if you could answer that. Major General Dwivedi.
Well, Sarah, firstly, I commanded in Siachen Northern Glacier 16 Jat. So I am going to speak from my experience. Well, the physical fitness is very important, but it's how you train. And my battalion had the lowest casualties. We just had 2 casualties in the glacier. And we are from Jat Regiment. And people say the mountain troops too well. So therefore, first and foremost, like to defy the point that it has much to do with the training and how you motivate your people. Secondly, yes, the age factor definitely matters. But you see, age also is related to your rank. We require good NCOs who are very, proficient, who have seen the war. And in 70th war, our company howlder major won the Veer Chakra. He was laid down the life post mostly. So therefore, it's also the experience and the age combined together. You can't have the kindergarten army. I have seen PLA, People Liberation Army of China. I was there as a defense attaché. And their performance in Tishul, where I later commanded after Siachen, is pathetic. The President Xi Jinping is not happy with his young chocolate soldiers who came for 3-4 years. And now I'm sitting in US and I discussed the issue with number of veterans. I'm speaking from New York. They say that you select a person on certain terms and conditions. Don't tell him after 4 years, okay, you will be competing now, 75% will be thrown out. That's not the way. You tell him straight away that, okay, you come for 5 years and after that you go. You are not going to be competing for those 25%, seats, and that's going to create very unhealthy competition. Secondly,
yes, sir.
We require to have lot of lateral placement among the paramilitary forces. If you don't want people at a certain stage, they can go to lateral placement of paramilitary forces. In fact, let me tell you, on the border you don't fight, army is not fighting. You have ITBP. I had BSF under me, CRP. They are serving up to 60. Who is talking about their age? No one is talking about that. And let me tell you, at 60, they are not fit on the borders or for the CI. So it has to be integrated look. You cannot just single out the army and say that this is only required to be young. All defense forces need to be young. And there is plenty of scope to have the lateral placement. The Jawan who is at 7 to 10 years service makes an excellent, BSF Jawan or a CRPF Jawan. These are the harder option. But unfortunately, those options not being exploited. And the softer options being taken, you are killing the regimental spirit. As a commanding officer, what do I tell my Jawan? Look, boy, you came for 3 years, after you are gone. Now, this is not a transaction. I give you 11 lakhs. Good enough. Goodbye, God bless. That doesn't work out in the armed forces. And I am talking as a veteran of war.
Right. Can I just ask you about this 11 lakhs, Sir Lieutenant General Chaturvedi, before I bring in PKD Nambiar and Adil Singh Boparai, this 11 lakhs, the government has been saying that, look, it's a win-win situation. You get trained for 4 years and at the end of that, you leave with 11 lakhs. I do want to confirm, is this similar? Is this not similar to like a provident fund that civilians get when we work in, so-called regular civilian jobs, where the 30% they have to pay from their pay and the government matches that? That is my understanding, Lieutenant General Chaturvedi. Could you confirm that? Is that what happens?
I'm not the right person to that. Whatever you have understood, probably that's how it is correct. What I'm more concerned about, definitely about this ratio of 75 and 25. Any scheme can be fine-tuned in the future. There should be an ideal mix. I can tell you, people are posted, those in the other organization. Army role is absolutely different. Basically is the war. And I'm very sure people who have seen war, they know last war was Kargil, so we know that youngsters and every issue, and it's not a new scheme. It is going on this discussion about, when I was Director General, there were many presentations. I didn't know whether the scheme is correct or not, but that much is, I'm very, very clear that certainly the average age of the recruitment was supposed to be lowered because of this reason. Now it has fine-tuned. Maybe any scheme which is launched, Indian Army has not come in one day. Indian Army is so many years old. So every Indian Army also fine-tuned so many things. Look, till 1971, average age of retirement was 7 to, if I remember, General Dwivedi he may be knowing better than me, that the average in 1971, it was about 7 to 10 years. It is after 71 operation, it has become like, now age has increased for the Jawans. Otherwise, the average Jawan used to go home in 7 to 10 years, if I remember correctly, exactly.
All right. So you're saying we must move times
the ideal mix of
with the times.
Senior and junior. So that is what is required. What fine-tune required, I'm very sure other administrators can.
I also have PKD Nambiar, a political analyst who supports the BJP, and Adil Singh Boparai, of course, from the Congress. So, Mr. Nambiar, you've heard Lieutenant General Chaturvedi. He is overall in favor of this scheme, yet he points out what he says is very worrying is what will happen to that 75% that is not absorbed by the army. What will happen to them? Because yesterday we saw those horrific statements coming out from BJP leaders, including Mr. Vijay Varghese, saying they can be welcome as guards at the BJP office. You had another union minister saying they can become drivers, electricians, washermen, etc. Is this a cruel joke?
Well, Sarah, good evening to everybody. I believe that some of those comments from some of these leaders, whether it is from the ministers or leaders, are definitely unfortunate. That is not the way this scheme has been perceived. As far as the technicality... Yeah, there are, as far as the technicality of this particular scheme, we have been discussing it and hearing it about from this various defense former and the current defense personnel in a big way. There are two things both the generals were just trying to tell you. I can tell you whichever I know. I can be stand corrected if I am wrong. That is, the average age of today's Indian defense forces are 32, and this scheme will bring it down to 26. So that means that is one of the biggest thing, because I think you were asking this question to them. One. Number two is that even today, about 17,000.
No, I'm trying to understand how. I just want a quick explanation on how that reduces.
I may not be able to be the right person to give you that exact explanation. My apologies for that. The reason being, there has been a very, very clean, clear-cut presentation on a press conference. One of the lieutenant
All right, let
generals
me
from
ask
the
you
Indian
this. There
Army
is always a social reverberation of a policy, right? And in this case,
Yeah.
I understand, as we're saying, the army requires that the age of the average Jawan go down. But if that happens and we start recruiting Jawans at 17 to 23, is it not a dilemma for anyone choosing to go into the army? Because it will mean that they have to give up their college. Because you will be a class 12 student when you have to take that decision. And then in 4 years, if you do not get absorbed, will you be a 23-year-old out in the world today as a 12th pass? PKD number.
May I just very quickly explain you? One of the biggest crises, I have been always telling, I'm an entrepreneur myself, I employ a decent number of people across India and in the Middle East. Let me tell you, the problem of today is about the real smart people in the market. It is not about the problem is not the employment. It's about the employability, whether it is our engineers who are coming out of the institutions, and which has been discussed in many times.
Do you think a class 12 student is employable in your firm?
I am telling you, what is that you require as an employer? What do I look from an employee? He should be physically fit, mentally fit, an agile person who can be trained further. And secondly, at the age of 17 and between the 21 or 22 years, and an average age in a private sector, anybody who employs, even in your organization or my organization, is about 24 to 25, even sometimes even beyond that. So the idea is that if you are going to have a certain kind of an individuals who are who served in the Indian Army and who are mentally and physically strong and who will be employable in the market. And most importantly, you have to treat it more than an employment, and army is not an employment exchange. Army is not even a place where...
Okay, fine. All right. Let me put that across to Adil Singh Boparai. Adil, perhaps there are many questions unanswered about this scheme, but the point PKD Nambiar is making is that the army cannot be seen as the mainstay where you have to absorb the excess of India's youth who cannot find jobs anywhere else. That is not healthy either. Let me play devil's advocate.
This is a reckless policy which is going to have disastrous consequences for our country. Point number one. Point number two, I would like to address two broad issues. The first issue is that at the expiry of 4 years, 75% of these Agniveers will be discharged. Now, the real question, the elephant in the room is, how do you reintegrate them into society? How do you ensure that they're gainfully employed? My friend from the BJP, or the one who supports the BJP, spoke about employability. Employability envisages a certain degree of skill set, a skill set which is required for the purposes of gainful employment. Now, what skill set is being provided to these Agniveers? How do you reintegrate them? This is point number one. Point number two is, and there has been an overwhelming number of veterans who have highlighted and red flagged this issue, is that whether a 6-month period is an adequate period for training. I think there is an extremely large school of thought which believes that this 6-month period is inadequate. Number three, which is extremely important, is that we are passing through a phase in our country, in our evolution, where there is political and social churn, where the economy is in a dismal state, where unemployment is at an all-time high. Now, again, coming back to my primary grievance or my primary issue, how do you reintegrate and gainfully employ them given the current context? I think this government has hastily envisaged this scheme. They have thrusted this scheme onto this country without building a consensus, without speaking and consulting a wide range of people who have expertise in this area. And this is exactly what happened with the farm laws. This is exactly which happened with demonetization. And finally, Sarah, the CDS late General Bipin Rawat was advocating increasing the age of Jawans. Now, here is a government which has done exactly the opposite. Now, these are facts which are in public domain. Let any general, let any veteran who is supporting this scheme, please asking them a simple question. What has been the statistics or what has been the status of this government in employing the current set of ex-servicemen? Let me show you, I come from Punjab.
Of course, much more has to be debated.
ATM guards.
Many unanswered questions, much to be questioned and debated and analysed and understood. But I want to quickly ask either Lieutenant General Chaturvedi or PKD Nambiar my concerns about, whether we're putting out about 30,000 class 12 pass outs every year into our economy to be absorbed. I want to ask you this, like I said, there are social fallouts for every decision. So, Lieutenant General Chaturvedi, do you think if a 17-year-old applies, gets in, and then at 23, do you think in our society, given, let's say, many of these Jawans come from rural areas, at 23, the family will say, all right, beta, ab aap वापस school chale jao, ya college chale jao?
Look, since many years we were talking about, forget about this scheme, we were talking about that army should be compulsory for this nation. This country requires more discipline. So that way we are certainly going to gain, even if you ask me, nobody is going to give him job at 17 years. If he's entering at 17 years of age and coming out at that age of 23, I'm very sure the biggest problem is actually over the whole scheme is not much of a debate about whether we want to keep the army young or fit. Biggest problem is how much should be the mix of senior and junior. Maybe 75-25 may not be ideal. Maybe it happens, I'll tell you, not many people know about the medical corps. We have medical corps, we have regimental medical officers. You ask any fighting force people who are sitting here, they will say the best doctor was RMO. Why they say the best doctor was RMO? Because he was young. Most of our RMOs were short service. Medical persons has been doctors. This ratio was always there. We take 100 doctors and then we retain 40, 60 are out. It was very fortunate that they were not getting jobs. What we always tell about these recruits also, these Agniveers, when they go out, there should be a very solid scheme. Written that what they should.
All right, I think it's fair to say that we can all agree on that. PKD Nambiar, there should be a scheme. You believe the government says it is providing a scheme and it is providing a way to absorb all of these aspirants. Thank you all for joining us. This is not the last we've heard on this matter. The debate will, of course, continue on NDTV.